Hey guys, welcome back to another Cars on the Road custom series. Today's episode is episode 8, the Road Rumblers. This probably has to be one of the top 3, at least, of my favorite episodes. This is actually kind of the ones I started on when I decided to start making these customs. So it was a little kind of like full circle when I realized I had all the episodes, at least one car put in for every episode. So that's kind of like, I was like, then I just started going crazy with it. So this one is a Revo color changers. So it was really easy with it being completely plastic and having the screws put in. It was really easy to just take apart and paint. And that's pretty much all I did too. I just took the stickers off and repainted it. The only thing I did other than that was redid the mouth expression to give him a less happy, smiley look. Painted the exhaust pipes with a little bit of silver tape. Well, it's paint, but it's supposed to look more like the silver straps or tape, just to kind of, bandaged all together and stuff, just to kind of be halfway done. The Mohawk is a Rumbler McQueen Mohawk from the McDonald's line. I managed to get one of those, so I just painted it a dark ivory, and then I dusted it with a little bit of chrome, automotive chrome, to kind of give it that rusty metal look. The paint itself, I used the dark ivory, a satin nutmeg, with a little bit of red, just plain signal red. And that's to kind of give it that textured rustic look, because obviously you don't want it to be perfectly smooth. And if you look at it at certain angles, you can see where it's like looks more like metal, maybe corroded metal. Let's see if that focuses there. So like the top's more metal, and then you see at different angles it starts turning to a brownish red. That was just kind of done on purpose so that you're not seeing exactly one color, which is why it also has that greeny texture, because I did it while the paint was still wet. So that way it has some time to kind of mix and bubble together, and you don't have that smooth finish. Otherwise it would make it look too clean. This one is a Jeff Gorvette Pity, I believe. And if the name is any consolation to the song, then we know his name. And this one we don't. This is, in my estimation, Oil Cans Harry. If you look up the song, it'll kind of, from the soundtrack from that episode, it'll kind of give you that, like maybe that's his name. So this is just a Jeff Gorvette Pity. I stripped it and repainted it. It was the plastic version, so all I had to do was just remove all the stickers. I got lucky on that because the die-cast had the textured, and if I had the die-cast version of him, I probably would have used him, but this is just kind of what I had. So the hat was originally backwards, kind of give him like that, like what you would think of when you see a pit crew. They flip their hat backwards and they're ready to go. So I took it off and had to wind up remaking a whole new hat, because with this being plastic, it didn't survive the time I got done cutting it. And then I just inserted some metal pins, like thumbtacks, the little shiny metal flat thumbtacks. Inserted those in there and then glued them in. Tried to give them the right height and put them in the right position as accurate to the episode. The goggles or eyes are all steel stick and then painted a matte primer black 2 times. I find that the 2 times Rust-Oleum is the best as far as coating. So, and then I painted the body with a, what was it? I think it was not a rosemary, it was what's that color tone of purple? Lavender. So I used the lavender spray for the eyes. And then the hat, I just pretty much hand painted that because I wanted to give it, I didn't want to have the yellow, like my yellows and oranges were pretty bright, so I just dulled it down with a little bit of metallic silver. This is from the testers, so I was able enough to mix it up and that way give it that more dull and rugged look. The drums are toothpicks and beads. I just painted with a sand textured Rust-Oleum to give it that stone look. The forks I repositioned, bent them down a little bit, and then just repainted them to a silver and then dusted them with a little bit of brown to give it that rusty look. And to go with him, you have to have his set. This is just Monster Jam barrels. I spray painted them with a satin nutmeg and then made a brace for them out of popsicle sticks, and then I used the homemade dye or homemade stain for those, which is white vinegar and an SOS pad. The longer you leave it, the darker it'll get. And then I glued it onto a piece of 22 gauge steel sheet metal. And then for the metal, like this is actual rust. So all I did with that is roughly mix a white vinegar, hydrogen peroxide, and table salt. And then just kind of let it on there and let it do its thing. I had to wipe the bottom off a little bit because it was too much. And then the pin is just like a safety pin with a piece of wood glued in it, so that if you do this right, he'll sit and then almost kind of have that bobble like he's floating, because in the episode he's strapped in, so that kind of gives it more of a less sturdy vibe. So, and if you have like a dark background behind it, then that kind of blends in. I used the same process with that as well. I just rusted the pin to give it a little darker vibe. The next one is another unnamed Rumbler. He is from... I forget his name. I do remember his name now because I had to look it up because I couldn't remember. I can never remember. This is the Duke Coulters, Thomasville Heyday racer from Doc Hudson's flashback in Cars 3. So I stripped the paint off because, as you know, all of his decals that he has on there were, I don't want to say three-dimensional, but they were kind of rough and rugged. So they had, if I would have just painted over it, you'd have been able to see through the texture. So I just stripped it completely off, down to just the bare metal, which is what the hood is. I did not paint or do anything to the hood. This is exactly what the die-cast bare metal would look like. So I painted the straps in with a satin or a black primer, same one as those goggles. Didn't have to do anything to the base or to the, yeah, I know that's kind of ugly, but I'm going to fix that too. The exhaust tips, that's what Mattel had already done, so I didn't do anything there. Dusted the mirror with a little bit of a brown ivory, same with the eyes. And the body itself, I used a beige high heat, and then the paint started flaking off. So, and because I didn't want to clear coat it to give it that shiny look, I just kind of let it go, because especially with the paint flaking, it makes it look better. The fenders and the side panels are a satin nutmeg. The rims are dusted with a bronze or a gold, I believe. I think it was a gold. And the Mohawk, excuse me, the Mohawk is actually toothpicks. I mean, I guess that's what you would call a Mohawk, but it's not as defined as him. It's got a lot more parts to it. But I just glued toothpicks on because I didn't want to have to try to drill into the metal because it has to be uniform. 3 big ones in the middle, 1 little on the front, 2 little in the back, and then 2 smaller ones on the side. And it had to be uniform on each side, so it would have just gotten away from me by the time I tried to drill it. So I just used those and then painted them with a dark ivory, dusted with a little bit of silver or chrome to give it that textured look, like rusted metal. Now this one, I think is probably, I know he's going to be released. I seen the announcement. I don't know, a month or so ago. This one is Rumbler McQueen. This is just an on-the-road McQueen that I took the color changers, which I'll get to here in a minute. That's where I got all these parts from. But because this was the color changers, I hand painted all the dirt, the grime, the rust. All that's been hand painted and or layered. So I layered it to give it that multi-texture. And then I colored in the bolts. But where I got these parts from is from the color changers. And all I did was just take out the parts that I needed, took them off or cut them off, and then used them, glued them onto there. Glued them on and then just positioned them to where they needed to be. The exhaust tips are actually 2 sets. So this base is from him, and then I used another base to give the exhaust tips the length that they needed. Otherwise, they just came out a little bit like regular exhaust tips. But yeah, you definitely needed that swooping motion, the little upsweep on them. And then I did paint in the McQueen body, and I changed the expression a bit. This is the original on the road McQueen. This isn't the variant. So I changed the expression, gave him more of a menacing scowl, colored in the teeth, because they were originally all white. And then the last one for this episode, at least, is... I mean, something is missing with him. There's got to be something, right? Rumbler Mater. Again, I changed the expression, changed the mouth. The horn is from a McDonald's Rumbler Mater. I just painted it and drilled it out. It was originally completely flat on the front here, so I just used my Dremel to drill it in and hollow it out just a bit. Give it that depth, so it's not just like one solid piece of plastic. Used chrome or bronze, brass, whatever you want to call it, beads. I just glued those on. So, tried to position them to accurate to the movie, or to the episode, I'm sorry. Glued them on accordingly. Did the door first, which was just a square. And then I carried them back from there. So, the gun is actually, or flamethrower, this is actually a gun off of a model tank, which I think I'm going to use the actual flamethrower from the Disney store, Mater. So I think I'm going to just swap that out because that's definitely more accurate. But let me know if you think, what you think about this one. And the tow cable, I repositioned it, cut the rope or the cable back, brought it up more so that the tow hook's raised. And then for the spiky ball, mace, whatever you want to call it. The technical term is a mace, but people have a lot of different variations to call it. This is actually just steel stick and white penny nails that you would use for paneling. So, excuse me. So I just pretty much chopped them down to the right length that I felt like they needed to be. Drilled a hole into the steel stick and then inserted them in with a little bit of glue. And then I just painted it with the dark ivory again, and then a little bit of just a hint of the satin nutmeg to give it that dirty look, but also maybe it's rusty. So there's that. And this will conclude the Road Rumblers episode. Let me know in the comment which one you guys like the best. Which one was the most exciting. And feel free to give me any comments or anything that I may have missed out or lucked out on, overlooked, anything like that. I'll try to answer them in the comments as best I can. Oh, and I just happened to forget one more thing about the Rumbler Mater. I made a flame for him. This is all handmade with just scrap plastic and a piece of like a pin or metal, like the safety pins. I just cut that off and inserted it in the length of it. Hand painted it with a orange, red, and yellow to give it that flame look, fire look. And all you do is insert it, and now his flame is officially lit. And I think if I decide to swap it out with this one, I think I will still insert the flame on this as well, so it can be removable. So there's that. So stay tuned, and there's only one more episode coming up before the random videos come out. And the main centerpiece that I always talk about is coming along. Hopefully it'll be coming out before too long. So again, enough of the rumbling, I guess you could call it. This has been the Road Rumblers episode. The next episode will be episode 9, Getting Hitched. Such polar opposites. See you in the next one. Bye.